Good morning, good morning. I have good news for you. I have a talk that is guaranteed AI free. When I was 16 years old, I pretty much knew what life was all about. I knew how life should be lived, at least that's what I thought back then. I was wearing long hair, clothes as black as I could find them, and listening to death metal. And I think this is a nice example of a logo of a death metal band that is utterly unreadable. It's a bit of a thing in the death metal scene. Blood Incantation, it's the band name for those who want to know. So listening to music that makes your ears bleed, I knew one thing for sure, that I would never ever do something as boring as becoming a lawyer or work at the bank. So here I am, but you could also say I achieved 50% of my life goals. And to friends I know from that period, I say I work at a financial institute to avoid the word bank and refresh their memory. So, 16 years old, looking for a place to go to college, and actually it didn't matter that much where I would go to college, as long as I would go as far away from my parents as possible. Now, I lived in the center of the Netherlands, and Netherlands is of course a quite small country, so it's quite disappointing if you want to go really far from your parents. I knew I wanted to do something creative, so I thought, well, maybe I can try this most prestigious academy of the Netherlands, the Rietveld Academy, and otherwise I can go to the Aki, which is quite close to the border here of Germany. So first I went to apply for the Rietveld Academy, and I went there, portfolio under my arm, and I vividly remember looking at the people over there, and they were actually a bit weird people, and I was sort of looking down on them. I liked creative, but not this creative. These people were wearing purple skirts, and they hand-painted white flowers on them. And I wanted to be this sophisticated, distinguished graphic designer with black turtlenecks. And I thought, well, that's clearly not going to happen at the Rietveld Academy, so I'm going to the east of the Netherlands. A couple of weeks ago, I went to a vendor of ING, and it's actually located right across the street of the Rietveld Academy. And I was half an hour early, and I thought, well, let's sit on the bench at the Rietveld Academy and look at those people again. And I remember how glad I was to see all these creative people, these free thinkers, these square pegs in the round hole. And I was wondering, what has changed over the years? And I think what changed was that in my life I've seen way too much mediocrity, too little creativity. But the other thing that had changed is that over the years I learned about the power of empathy. And empathy, that is our ability to look through the eyes of somebody else. And every design thinking process also starts with empathy. And that's also how I tend to solve a problem. I start with empathy. And I think more people should do that. If I look around me, I see too little empathy. I see designers looking down on engineers, engineers looking down on designers, and everybody looking down on product managers. I've been one, so I know, but it's a bit like if you don't have the brains to become an engineer, and if you don't have the creativity, you end up as a product manager. Somewhere on a scale of usefulness, probably between a rock and an empty beer bottle or something. Anyhow, lack of empathy. And I think that every minute that we don't empathize, we get stuck in miscommunication, lack of alignment, prejudice, leading to frustration, distrust, even anger. In short, you're losing money and you're losing it fast. So I think we need these engineers, we need these designers, and we need these product managers, and we need them working together. And designers, I think, are ideally positioned between them to bridge that gap. Like I said, I have been a product manager, but I actually played on all three sides: design, UX, and IT. So maybe that is also a bit where I learned that empathy. I'm now able to look through the eyes of all three sides. Recently, I've become lead product experience within ING, and more specifically, lead product experience in the tech department. So the tech department delivers services and products to the rest of the ING organization, which consists of 60,000 employees. So I think there's just as many opinions on what makes a good product, and I think that's also what makes my job really interesting. So in this talk, I want to tell you a bit about how I helped ING transition from being IT-driven to becoming product-led, and how this design thinking mindset can rock the IT and business world. First, I want to take you a bit back in history. 10 years ago, 2015, ING was very much siloed. So every country was more or less their autonomous business unit with their own vertical tech stack, stovepipe, with their own hardware, operating system, middleware, and then the business applications on top of it. And the involvement of ING as a group overarching the whole company was quite minimal. But then in 2015, they decided it's time for a change. So they said, okay, we're going to build this scalable tech platform, because it makes no sense to build the same hardware 10 times in 10 countries over and over again and reinventing that wheel. So yeah, solid reason, I think, for that change. Now, if you move up the tech stack towards the front end, you see that local preferences become more an issue. So for back end, the end customer, they will not notice whether an application is hosted on Spanish hardware or on German hardware. But for the front end, well, you saw that countries make more of an issue of saying that it's really specific to local markets. Luckily, even for front end, we found that there's quite some commodities that we can share across these countries. Now, this tech platform provides these services and IT products, but also as a country, you can, for instance, build a product, publish it on that tech platform for other countries to reuse it, which is quite beautiful. But these countries who build it, they must make sure that they build it really scalable. So we have this one engineering system that helps them build these scalable products. Yeah, and then you can become a provider and a consumer of products at the same time. You hear me mention the word product a lot, and I will mention it quite some times going forward. But this shared mental model of what a product actually is, before we got to that, that took an insane amount of time. Yesterday, Michaela also talked about the common language in an organization, how hard it is. Yeah, and we experienced the same with the word product. It felt a bit like comparing apples and pears at sometimes. So because a mortgage feature with an entire flow and backend and whatever, that is a digital product. But maybe one of the APIs you use within that flow to do this small approval and consent, that is also a product. So are we comparing apples and pears? I think that was a bit why the discussion was taking so long. And also because everybody felt impacted. So not only engineers or designers felt impacted, but also finance, tax, architects, everybody felt impacted. But at a certain moment, we did get to common understanding. So we saw that even though those products might be different, there are characteristics of a good product that they all share. And we found 33 of those characteristics, and we grouped them into 6 convictions. So onboarding process, that is of course how easy it is to get started with a digital product. The engineering experience is about how well is the product integrated into that tech platform. Is the documentation properly? Can you do it without human intervention? Those kind of things. Service model is about availability. Do you have agreements on that? How do you deal with incidents? The optimized charging, also really important. So we charge as a global provider to the consumers of the products. And they want to have, of course, predictable charging, and they want to have it optimized based on their actual usage. And we had another challenge because when you build these scalable products, you don't want to penalize the first adopter of that product with giving them the full cost of the product. So you also need to be a bit clever with that. And then we have roadmap prioritization. You want to have clear, transparent criteria how the product teams prioritize the feature request, and you want to make sure that the consumers are also able to influence that priority, either via user boards or in other ways. And lastly, you don't want to have that product team be the bottleneck. So you should be open to contributions, either via code or in people or in money. So we have all these 33 criteria grouped into 6 convictions, and you can score every criteria on 4 levels. And yeah, that's actually the closest we could get to a measurable product experience, but that was quite a milestone. As just mentioned, everybody felt impacted, was impacted, or could be impacted. And we wanted to also help people embrace this new product model, product operating model, I should say. So we came up with 6 tracks to help departments organize around these products. Leadership Trinity. Good news, design gets a seat at the table. Weird thing maybe is that the Trinity consists of 4 people. I guess if you make more than $1 billion profit, you can just put 4 people in a Trinity. But maybe it's also a bit that they are reluctant to let go of the word Trinity because quartet doesn't have that ring to it. So let's see how that changes over time. It's quite new still. Strategy alignment, also important. You want to have these autonomous product teams with their own vision and strategy, but you also want to make sure that it contributes to the bigger strategy of ING. So you want to have a drill down from the topmost ING strategy all the way down to your product strategy. And what really helps with that is, for instance, objectives and key results or KPIs, those kind of things. That's slightly longer term, and then of course you have a quarterly business review that is for slightly shorter term. Product manager maturity. That is an interesting topic. So in ING we have a bit of a weird history of giving confusing function titles to product managers. So 10 years ago it was formula manager. Then it was blueprint consultant. I've been a blueprint consultant, but I never put that on my CV or LinkedIn. Most weirdest function title of the list. Customer journey expert, and then product owner entered. But that was then only on the business side. So for the IT side, that was called a feature engineer. Now finally we have the product manager. So luckily an industry standard function title, but that comes of course also with industry standard expectations. So this track was really about how can we make sure that the product managers level up to that industry standard. Yeah, then the productization framework. I mentioned the 6 convictions with the 33 criteria. And the whole idea is that both consumer and provider agree on what makes a good product. So building globally scalable products that can come with a conflict of interest. So sometimes what's good for a local country is not good for the company as a whole. And you have to have some trade-offs. And I think this productization framework was perfect in actually documenting these trade-offs. And the good thing is that, like I said, you can score the product experience on these 33 criteria, but you have the provider that does a self-assessment. How do we think it's going? But also the consumer does an assessment. And obviously the interesting discussions is where the opinions on the maturity or the quality differ the most. Yeah, and we wouldn't be ING if we didn't have a cool Power BI dashboard to show it. And I'm not that fan of reports and Power BI dashboards, but in this case, I really feel that it's materialized empathy for both provider and consumer. Compelling roadmaps. Making a nice roadmap, it's an art form by itself. And I've seen many roadmaps in my life. I would almost say nobody knows roadmaps better than me, but then there's always Donald Trump. So in the old days, what you would see is that if an engineer would create a roadmap, he would create a roadmap with all information known to mankind. So it would have probably 1,000 lanes with all the small bumps and fixes and features, and probably only with a horizon of 4 weeks, because beyond that, it depends. And if a product manager would create a roadmap, it would probably be in Excel, a list of prioritized features, all nice and probably very valuable, but maybe utterly unfeasible. If a designer would create a roadmap, he or she would ask, who is it for? Because the designer understands that showing a roadmap to a CEO needs to tell a different story than a roadmap you show to the development team. But those were the old days. I think now, in the meantime, we are able to create a roadmap for the right audiences. But that is actually only where the complexity starts. Because imagine that you have 10 countries with, in each country, 30 initiatives that each have their own roadmap. And all these initiatives are depending on one or more of hundreds of shareable products that also each have their roadmaps. How can you make sure that you align all these roadmaps? Because those roadmaps, if they are not aligned, that leads to tactical solutions, which will be technical debt later, or it leads to waiting or other inefficiencies. And I don't have the solution yet. So if anybody has a solution on how to align so many roadmaps, please hit me up. But we did get better over time, but this is still a challenge in such a big company. Last one, the Obeya room. For those who don't know, Obeya is a Japanese word that means large room. So Obeya room would translate to large room. And the Obeya is a collaborative workspace where the leadership team can come together and do some decision making and really connect strategy with execution. So on one wall you might have your delivery portfolio, and on another wall you might have your operational health metrics, your availability, those kind of things, and on another wall even the OKRs. And the good thing is that it's all in one room. So you can make decisions, because what typically is the case in big corporate is that a problem is always a dilemma. So it's always about choosing this over that. If you want to do something here, it probably means doing something less over there. And in this Obeya, you can really make these decisions with all the information that you have. But the important thing is that you want to make sure that everybody gets to a common understanding as fast as possible. And this is really where visual communication helps. For instance, with charts and graphs, you can really make complex information snackable. And with color, for instance, you can really get to an emotional level. We all understand that a chart that is in full red is more important to look at than a chart that is completely in green. Yeah, and the last thing, I like the trust and transparency of this room. So everybody gets to see the same information, and everybody can see where the issues are and where the problems are. And everybody can also walk into that Obeya. So do not underestimate the power of visual communication. And I think, yeah, this is really where this distinguished, sophisticated graphic designer can do an awesome job, but maybe even better the creative thinker with the purple skirt and the white flowers on it. But I think also, like Jeff said yesterday, that designers, they are the #1 communicators of the heart and soul of the company. So they are really equipped to do that visual communication. Takeaways. In order to get what you want, think about what others want. If you cannot do it alone, you gotta understand what makes people move. Second one, in companies, problems are always dilemmas. So it's about choosing sides. And I think the one who is able to tell the most compelling story gets to choose the side, but you gotta make sure you understand who your audience is. And the third one, I think, yeah, that's maybe a bit for the people who work in big corporates, but you got to get to that shared mental model with everybody, whether it's digital products or jobs to be done or customer journeys, whatever. And once you get to that shared mental model, you gotta go all in. Biggest takeaway, empathy is key. If we can all, a little bit more, consciously choose to put away our biases, assumptions, prejudice, and try to look through the eyes of somebody else, a little bit more, I think our companies would do way better. And I think also, yeah, the world will be a better place. Thank you.
Steven. Well, wonderful way to kick things off. Great level of humor. Really lovely final message there. We have some questions from the room. Anybody who has joined us since the beginning ramble from me, the QR code is new for today, so make sure you scan that and get your questions in. I'm going to be slightly cheeky as host and ask you a question first before we move on to these things. The Obeya rooms, love that, large room, everything yep. Up and visual. How does that work digitally? Do you have a digital sort of space for your Obeya, or do you always bring people into a physical space?
Yeah, that's not only cheeky, but you're really poking where it hurts.
That's all right. I'll leave. Yeah.
No, it's a fair question, because ideally you want to have this physical room. So I really love the physical room, because I want to be like Kim Jong-un pointing at things. So I like that, and touching things and putting something from left to right. That really helps. But indeed, we have distributed teams in I think 5 countries. So we have hubs in Poland, Romania, Spain, Turkey, India. So we have to also have the digital equivalent. So what we're now trying to do is a bit of both. Because we also feel that physical has its limitations. So sometimes if you look at an issue, you want to drill down, okay, which epics are connected to it. So yeah, it's always a combination of physical and digital. That's how we do it.
Nice. Standard middle of the road answer, it has to be, right? It's the world we live in. Everything's hybrid, it has to be hybrid.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, the top 2 questions are fighting with each other a little bit. Let's dive in before it changes. So, OKRs. a way of setting goals in a previous life, pre-product led. What tips do you have on using goal setting techniques like OKRs in a more product led approach?
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of OKRs. So I've been advocating for it very much, struggling with it a lot. So we also have been learning. So you have always the dilemma of cascading OKRs. So do you want really 100% cascading of OKRs from top to bottom? Our answer at this moment is no, but you want to make sure at least OKRs are not in an opposite direction. The second learning we have is OKRs, they really have to be measurable. So you really quickly fall into the trap of having something that is not measurable, or that you say, we're going to measure it somewhere along the way, but then they are completely useless. And the last learning that we have is that you cannot stop at just defining your objectives and key results. You also got to think about what are then the initiatives below the key results that really bring you to that key result. Because those define also your product roadmap. And if you don't think about that up front, then you get into problems later on. So those are the learnings we have for objectives and key results.
All right, so a little bit more connective tissue from that objective, that key result that's there, hopefully clear on paper, although we were talking yesterday about over the beers, like easier language to maybe use on OKRs, but more connective tissue down to what it actually means at a product roadmap level.
Otherwise they get disconnected indeed.
Yeah, amazing. So obviously, ING, big company. You fulfilled half of your life goal to not end up in a bank. So big company, how did you advocate to facilitate that change with as a designer in that company?
Yeah, so yesterday, what struck me in the responses is that the designers seem a bit scared of AI, and I think they underestimate the power designers have. So the way I looked at myself was sort of, I'm like a wolf in sheep's clothes. So I entered that IT department as one of the first UX designers, and those people didn't know what was happening because I was telling them that there were users on the other end of the software and they didn't know. But I think as a designer, you really have the position to give them a different way of thinking, to help them think outside of the box. So as a designer, you should focus a little bit less maybe on crafting that UI and really think about how can I change people's minds, change people's thinking. I think as a designer, you have that power to do so. And if you just get stuck in your tunnel vision about your next UI, then you will be replaced by AI. But think about the power you have to help people think different.
Nice. This is a good and difficult question from Christian so early in the morning, but something I think we've probably all faced a little bit in the room. Stephen, how are you handling those spontaneous legal requirements, the thing that has to be done right now, it's a sudden shift, we need to do this, versus all of that careful roadmap planning you've done?
I do a bit of a reverse trick. So I try to delay them. So typically what they say is like, this has to be there. European regulation, everybody will be extremely mad if you don't do it. But then, I really need to see that proof and really challenge them on those legal requirements, because I think often they get too easily through while you're not even sure that they are. So delay it a bit and meanwhile focus on cool stuff.
Amazing. Delay legal, focus on cool stuff. What a great way to end things. Ladies and gentlemen, your first speaker today, Stephen Roest.
Thank you.